Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas coming at you live on this Monday night's edition of The People Show on intellectualradio.com. We are also streaming at Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube, and now Instagram has been added. We've been added to that platform. Charles, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing pretty good, man. I've had a pretty good week. Lot going on in the world, of course, which we're going to get into tonight in a very big way.
Absolutely. But before we get into that, this is February, Black History Month, and I certainly want to acknowledge Black History Month. And we are going to potentially have some guests, and we're going to be talking about people who have contributed to the advancement of Black life in America and in the world, for that matter, past and present. And I want to start off by recognizing, number one, the three reservist soldiers that were killed in a drone airstrike over in Jordan. Three Black reservists, all from Georgia. Kennedy Sanders, special, I think it says Special Sergeant Kennedy Sanders, Sergeant Williams Rivers, and Special Sergeant Breonna Muffet. Those were the three Black American reservists that were struck and killed in an attack in Jordan. And so we honor their service to the country and the sacrifice, the ultimate sacrifice that they've made for the country.
Yeah, in fact, you can go back to Crispus Attucks, who is renowned as the first life taken in the American Revolution.
Yes.
On up through every conflict that this country has been involved in, there have been Black people who have been on the front lines and who have made that ultimate sacrifice for this country.
Absolutely. 17, what is that, April 9th, 1776 or something like that?
Wow.
Somewhere around there.
You got a lot on your hard drive, brother. Should remember that.
Well, you and I do a lot of reading, so
yeah.
But this is important stuff. Also, we want to, on a sad note, Brother Carl Withers made his transition in his sleep this past week.
Renowned as Apollo Creed.
As Apollo
in the Rocky
Creed
movie. Yes.
A former NFL football player turned actor, and became a super megastar in the Rocky series. And I did not know him as a NFL football player. I didn't know.
Either.
Yeah. And but they had revived him recently. He has been in a number of the Super Bowl commercials in these last several weeks with another retired football player. I think his name is Grock or something like that. But he had been in several commercials, and I see that they have removed them out of respect for the family. They have removed those from the air because I haven't seen any of them since it was announced. It was a surprise to many people, certainly to those, because he had been off the scene for a while, and then here he is in all these commercials leading up to the Super Bowl. And I think I was on a site, and a friend of mine had gotten a notice that Carl Withers had made his transition Friday. That notice had come by. So he passed away in his sleep. He was 76 years old. So Carl Withers did some great work.
Yeah, I mean, 76 years old, man. That's not that far away for some of us. And, it really means, I'm speaking now as a senior. When we hear about people passing and we see that number, it really brings us closer to our own mortality.
Yes.
And it's it's an experience, a different kind of experience after you've reached your 70, let's say.
Yeah. Well, I heard an actor, I can't think of his name right now, but I heard an actor, they were asking him, he was 62 at the time, and they were asking him um, about, does he think about mortality? And he says, I do think about it. He says, but when I was 40, I thought about it differently than I think about it at 62, because at 40, I can double 40. At 62, I can't double 62. I'm 63. I'm not that far away. Death is something, as frequently as we see it, read about it, hear about it, it is an experience that we all will have to experience, but it is an experience that we will never become familiar with. It is.
You can't become familiar with it. It's hard to become familiar with it, but
Right.
I think if you have faith, that helps you
Oh, absolutely.
understand the meaning of your life and how your life shall end. Because I think if you can live your life with a faith, it will comfort you until the end, whatever that end will be.
Hmm.
Um, I know my faith does that for me. I can't speak for anyone else, but I for those without it, they should try it. And I'm not promoting any particular faith. I'm just saying faith
Right.
in believing in what your life truly means in the larger scheme.
I concur, and while I don't try to proselytize on these platforms that we have available to us, except for to say to people, whatever your faith commitment is, get in it, practice it, because all of them have some very good principles. And as close that we could get to practicing those principles, um, that we believe that it will help us to put life into a better perspective.
Yes, definitely,
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely.
So, all right. Well, listen, on to the news, Um, unfortunately, there's another controversy going on. Just over the weekend, there was another uh, black man shot and killed out in one of the
It was,
suburban communities.
it was Carol Stream, I think.
Carol Stream, yes, Carol Streams, and he had called for help because he was having uh, there was a domestic issue, but it was a domestic issue that they were due to some mental breakdown. Um, and it turns out that he ended up losing his life, that the police killed him. We don't know the details around it, but the family is certainly saying that there's some serious questions about it. So we will see how that unfolds in the coming weeks.
Yeah, they said he was having the family reported that he was having some mental uh, issues. There was
Mhm.
he had some mental disturbances, and I believe they called the police, or someone nearby called the police. They arrived, and apparently that's when the shooting happened. And he apparently was not armed. At least these initial reports are saying he's not armed. The family has contacted a lawyer, uh, and of course that's all going to have to be resolved. But I did
His
I think
name
it
is
was
Andy Stroth. Andy Stroth. I've met Andy.
that's the lawyer. Yeah, I've met
Yes.
Andy as well. But
Mhm.
I did a police training, and they did it for the media, where this was maybe 20 some years ago, really. And what they did, they gave you a toy gun or a blank gun or whatever, and they put you in different situations. And you were going to be the officer, and they would have mocked up a domestic disturbance. And what would happen, you would go into the scene, and then, a husband and wife would be fighting, and the husband might have wife might have, somebody had a knife, and then they turned and they lunged at the officer, and you had to make the decision how to protect yourself in that situation. I can remember so many of the cases where I actually fired my pistol, that the mock gun that they gave me, at the suspect, sometimes hitting the person. And then I would find out later, oh, that person didn't have a knife. They were holding a rolling pin, not a knife. It was a rolling pin. But I fired my weapon. I used deadly force on a rolling pin. But as a police officer who was thinking about my own self-preservation, that's how I reacted. And I remember at the time I had quite a view of police officers who used excessive force. But after that training, I had a different feeling about it. I certainly don't condone excessive force, but I do understand how police officers get into the position where they use excessive force. And it's not always because of something that's in their heart, that is racism or whatever. It's because they're trying to protect themselves. It's a difficult situation, and I'm sure that they'll get to the bottom of it in Carol Stream. Then you have extreme cases like Laquan McDonald, where the cop unloads 16 shots. That was totally ridiculous. And then you see the insult to the injury is when this police officer who shot Laquan McDonald 16 times is a free person right now, just like you and me. So there's so much to be, you have to determine, there's so much to be determined here, Mark. But we'll have to see how it comes out. But it's not always, a racially charged situation. Sometimes it's just a scared cop who was trying to get home to see his family that night.
Yeah. Listen, I know that there are, in those circumstances, in some of those circumstances, obviously, when you are a police officer and you're called to a situation that you have seconds to make a decision. And sometimes,
milliseconds.
To make a decision. However, I think that there have been this growing number of incidences where there have been domestic issues that have ended up in unnecessary deaths at the hand of police. That the city of Detroit recently, within the last year, instituted a crisis response to certain domestic issues rather than sending out the police with guns. They send out a trained crisis intervention squad. They have been getting some rather good results from that. And I think that it would behoove police departments, all over to consider that model that they are using out in Detroit. Because
have they reduced excessive force complaints in Detroit?
Well, they certainly have reduced excessive force complaints with respect to the domestic calls. So overall, I can't speak to whether it's overall as a result of this, but certainly related to domestic calls, they have some positive results.
I have read that they're going to need to spend a lot of money to do that, because if you send a social worker, someone trained in dispute resolution, to these scenes, you're still going to have to send an armed officer.
They're accompanied.
Exactly.
There are police officers who are trained, specially trained in this area.
But they're going to be armed.
Social work.
They're going to be armed, though, right?
Yes.
Those police officers are going to be armed. I
Right.
thought maybe this was going to be a separate class of officer, or yeah, officer, who basically went there to do conflict resolution. But
They are they go there with that intention to do conflict resolution because it was a different call from other calls. They are segregated, right? They are sending people who are specially trained to handle these types of crises, as police officers and as social workers, that to handle these situations to prevent unnecessary force on situations where you have people who have mental challenges, um, that a person of special training can communicate with them to de-escalate that situation or to intervene in that situation.
you know
And
that's something that perhaps I know the Mayor Johnson talked about police reforms, and I believe I heard him speaking about this kind of officer being used in Chicago or being employed in Chicago. But I don't know that we have any people like that on the street. And I don't know that there really have been any people budgeted in this next budget to do that. The budget that Mayor Johnson
mhm.
presented to the council, and it was approved. I don't know that there are any officers like that, that there's a new division within the department that will do this kind of work.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I saw this report. I saw this report on one of the morning shows, um, before the holidays last year. I think it was on one of the Sunday morning shows. They were talking about this program that they have piloted in Detroit, and I just certainly think that it's needed. You know, it's needed. On every police department needs to have people who are trained as police officers actually coming in, who have been educated in the area of social work, that want to be police officers, that are specially trained how to handle these situations. That needs to be an added component in every department when they get these types of calls. It should not always be when they get a domestic call that you send the same force out with somebody on more violent calls.
Those calls, you never know what they're going to be. I mean, that's probably one of the more common police calls that we have in the city, that the domestic disturbance, whether it's husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, girlfriend and girlfriend, boyfriend and boyfriend, they get those all the time. I mean, they're deluged with calls like that any night. In fact, that might be a more common call, certainly, than violent crime or robbery or burglary. Those calls are incredible. You need a lot of trained police officers to deal with that. You would really have to have a a separate component in the training academy where every cop would have to be trained like that, which would be a bad thing. But I don't know if they have a gun with them, if they have a weapon, if they have deadly force, and someone is having a problem like that. I really don't know the difference it would make at this point.
Well, I think the difference will make in the training. It will, because you're going in with a different mindset. You're going in with a different attitude. You're going in equipped with different information. So
Yeah,
I think that it will, because there's a process that you go through to approach any situation, rather than just going there to approach a situation. I got a gun. This person might be violent and whatever. But with
I
some special training, I think that
uh,
we certainly can mitigate it. I think it's something that's certainly necessary. That because there's just too many cases that we can point to, even here, where we see people who died at the hands of guns that should never have.
speaking of police work in Chicago, did you read that the department reported that the clearance rate on, I think, homicides in Chicago has gone up to like 51%. It it's it's a really doctored number. They said that there were like 600 and some homicides in the city of Chicago last year, and the department is reporting that it cleared 51% of the homicides. Now, normally the department only clears about 15 to 20%, but
Here in
they
Chicago,
here in
nationally,
Chicago,
nationally, it's
yeah,
about 60%.
yeah, but here in Chicago, it's like 15, 20%. But the numbers were doctored in such a way that you go, wait a minute, hold it. They said there were 600 and some homicides, but last year they cleared 300 and some homicides. But these were homicides that could have happened 20 years ago that they cleared. And they're calling that the clearance rate, when in fact, they only cleared about 15 to 20% of the homicides that occurred in 2023. Now, overall, they cleared 300, but of those that occurred in 2023, they only cleared about 100 or so, something like that. I
Well,
mean, they were really playing with the numbers, is what my point. They're
but
really playing with the numbers. The
do you
cops are,
know? But
or the
I know. But
city.
do you know that? Do you know that the numbers that they were talking about are from
Yeah,
murders that
yeah,
happened beyond
yeah,
that time?
yeah. CWB Chicago, which
Okay.
is a website, did an analysis of the numbers, and it should be up right now. CWBchicago.com. If you go there right now and you look at the story that they wrote about it, you'll see that they're really playing with the numbers. It's
Is that the
incredible.
was that the only outlet that did the story?
I think they did the analysis. Yes, they were the only outlet that did the story. I
I
read
would
it.
be interested in seeing the analysis
Yeah.
of that by some other outlets other than just that one.
I mean, I would too, but I don't think anybody else has done the story. They simply took the raw numbers and looked behind the scenes, and they saw of these cleared homicides, some of them happened as long as 20 years ago.
Yeah,
Some of
I'd
some
like
of
to
them
reach
were
out.
taken off. Some of them were taken off the books for reasons that the suspect died. The
Mhm.
person we were looking for died, or he himself or herself was killed. They
Well, if
also
there were
took,
only if there was one in that number, if there was only one, and I'm being if there was only one in that number that they're computing into that 51%, it's a false it's a false reporting, because if you say that there's a 51% clearance, then you have to be talking about homicides that happened in 2023.
that was the point of the story. Read it, cwbchicago.com. I would let people read it for themselves and draw their own conclusions. I read it. I thought the department was they were spinning some numbers here, trying to make themselves look better, look more effective than they were, than they
Well, maybe
are.
maybe
Clearly,
we need to get somebody on from the department to come on and answer those questions. We need to read the story and to get somebody to come on to answer the question. But I think that there's there's some other outlets that do some analysis that on the police department, and ProPublica, they were doing some analysis on the police department. I think that they would be a good source to do an analysis on that. But again, you can't say that there's a 51% clearance of homicides if you are using homicides that are 10, 15, 20 years old. You're saying
yes,
that now you've cleared those. You should say, well, we have cleared 50% of the old homicides, right?
yeah.
So, but
The, the,
if
the, the
there, if,
bottom the bottom line is people are still getting away with murder in the city of Chicago.
well, they,
And it repeats itself around the country too, but
right.
not just Chicago, but a lot of people are getting away with murder still in the city of Chicago. And this 51% clearance rate is an effort, I think, by the department to make the department look better and more effective than the department actually is.
I don't I don't think that I would disagree with that because it has been an abysmal. It has been an abysmal um, clearance rate that the city of Chicago has had for years. They've been at 15 to 20%. When the national clearance rate is about 67% around the country.
Really?
Yes,
I-
67% around the country. And Chicago has been at the bottom of the heap for a long period of time. And it's, funny that you would see it. I did not see that story from CWB. Is that what it is? CWB? Right.
CWBchicago.com.
Yeah. I'd like to know who is it that's behind that medium?
That website, I'm
Yes.
not entirely sure. I mean, they do some writing about the people who are doing
Hmm.
it. Apparently, there are some people on the north side who were, I think it was big, on the north side who did it, who were they believed that they weren't getting the real story from the Chicago Police Department when they would go to CAPS meetings.
Hmm.
And so they started doing um, uh, their own accounting of the crime in their neighborhoods, and this website grew out of that. But it's sort of like a civilian kind of, almost, at least from a journalistic point of view or from a records keeping point of view, these were vigilantes really who went out there and said, "Hey, we're not going to accept what the department is telling us about crime. We're going to go out there, talk to the victims, look at the police reports, and report on our own." And I think it's a fairly effective website for what it's worth. I don't think they don't do as much on the south and west sides as they should be doing. They seem to focus only on the north side and the far northwest side in terms of crime. They don't really get into what's happening on the south and west sides, which I find really a problem with the website. They
Hmm.
also, unlike the Chicago Tribune, which will not report the race of a suspect, CWB Chicago seems to make it a point to point out that the suspects are black males or Latino males
Hmm.
or white males for that point. They seem to get into the whole racial aspect of crime that occurs in the city, and I think it's really had an impact on the perception of crime in on the north side. I mean, I'm downtown, but and there's a perception down here that crime is rising, and the numbers back it up that it is, particularly as it pertains to robberies and burglaries, though, and car theft. Ooh, wow, car theft really going up in this part of the city. But the homicide problem is more on the south and west sides than it is up here. But the robberies, the burglaries, the car thefts, the carjackings, it's out of control up here.
Well, yeah, we know that there's certainly been an increase on the north side, and some of the people who I hear some of the voices on the streets are saying, it's hitting white folks in their backyard and at their front stoops. Now maybe they'll pay uh, uh, a little different attention to it. Um, so there has certainly been a a rise in those incidents on the north side of Chicago, and where in the area where you live.
Yeah. Hey, man.
So
Yeah. I
speaking of newspapers, before you go on, but speaking of newspaper, did you hear that the Sun Times has now, or the Tribune has now, is it the Sun Times? One of those two have gone to nonprofit status. I
oh,
think
the
it's the
Sun
Sun Times.
Times. The
The
Sun
Sun
Times
Times.
did that some time ago. In fact, the Sun Times and WBEZ Radio are they work. I think they're owned by the same not-for-profit situation. Um, and but the Tribune They had a 1-day strike last week. You
Yeah, I
you heard
saw
about
that.
that?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The
Mhm.
Tribune, man, that is a. I tell you, as someone who spent 50 years in journalism, the Chicago Tribune, man, is a JOKE. I mean, I can't believe they're calling that a major daily newspaper now. The reporting staff has really hit the skids. They don't really stand for anything, really. Um, I couldn't tell you what the slant of the paper, the editorial position of the paper is. It used to be that, to me, the Tribune was a center right publication, conservative,
Mhm. Mhm.
and the Sun Times, of course,
That's a fair statement.
has always been a more progressive, liberal uh, approach to the news. Well, now the Tribune has virtually no identity at all. It doesn't really say anything. Um, the Sun Times, I think, is true to its creed. I mean, it's pro labor. I get it, and that's how they write, and I can live with that. But the Tribune is nothing, and they apparently are not paying people. They haven't. People there have not had a raise since 2018. And if you're out there trying to buy groceries in 2024 and you haven't had a raise since 2018, you're in trouble. And apparently, the company doesn't want to match their 401k situation. So that affects their retirement moving forward. And so many of the experienced reporters at the Tribune don't work there anymore. They're gone.
Well, that's what
Um,
that was going to be my next question is how many of the people there are some of the people that came out of that era that's with the Tribune? Because I know David Kidwell, who was David Kidwell actually came out of Florida. He was one of the people who broke the Enron scandal down in Florida. And David Kidwell is one of the ones who broke the red light camera story here that kind of broke it wide open here in Chicago. David Kidwell, and I think David Kidwell is either with the Better Government Association now, somewhere around. But reporters like that, I wonder how many of them are still tenured with the Chicago Tribune or the Chicago Sun-Times, for that matter, from that era. I know that the Chicago Tribune and the Chicago Sun-Times, they have been shuffled around from owner to owner. I don't know how many times that they've been sold. So, is there a real integrity for journalism with the ownerships of those companies, or is it just purely profit driven?
it's purely, to me, I mean, I can't say that about the Sun Times. I mean, they're a not for profit, but the Tribune, absolutely. I mean, that seems to be where they've gone. When I'm reading it, I see them patronizing uh, the audience. They're really not into. Again, they have no editorial position on anything. To me, I mean, I don't see it. It used to be they had Mike Royko, who would write on page two. Then they had John Cass, who was a conservative columnist who made no bones about it, and it was always there in the media mix in Chicago. You don't find those voices anymore in Chicago, and that's very, very difficult for me, who likes to read what everybody's writing. The Sun Times has been able to hold on to many of its columnists, um, and and that's who they are. The Mary Mitchell still writes for the Chicago Sun Times. I don't know that they had Laura Washington writes for the Tribune a column every Monday. Laura is a former colleague of mine. I like Laura, but her column is pure pablum. It says nothing. It just doesn't. And she has she'll report what's happening, but she doesn't really go after it as an opinionist. And I think editorial pages need to do that. They need to give me an opinion to disagree with or agree with. I can get the other news on the front pages, but the
So is she
editorial
just?
page,
So is she just journalizing the information with no analysis, or what?
It's valid. It's valid. I'm not saying it's invalid, but it has no point of view. And I think the editorial page needs to have a point of view. You need to tell me who you are, so I can judge the rest of the paper. Where are you coming from here? What is your perspective? I don't really get that out of her column, which happens every Monday, where Mary Mitchell, she makes a point.
What's the guy's name? What's the guy? Yeah, exactly. Mary Mitchell, you could either love or hate her,
right,
based on what she's written, but she's going to tell you what she thinks.
Tell you what you think.
But what's a guy's name? I forget his name. That used to be the editor over, the editor-in-chief over at the Tribune. He was a conservative guy. I respected him. Didn't agree with him much, but I respected him as an editor and a journalist. This was, I have to go back to the Daily Days, when, again, there was much that I didn't agree with, but I respected that they were trying to be fair with the information. That's what I respected about the Tribune at one time.
No, they all, I think both papers tried to be fair with the information back in the day. I think today they're basically trying to pander to an audience. Whatever they think most people want to read, that's what they think they're going to write. It's like everything else in America, where people.
Well, that's unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. It is. I think it's journalism of old. I don't know that I would even get involved in it again, because when I came out, it was preached into me that you had to do both sides of the story, particularly if you were covering general news. You had to get both sides of the story. I just saw a story done on Channel 7 about 3 weeks ago. It was when a group here in Illinois wanted to, they started a movement, and I'm sure you remember this story, to take Donald Trump off the ballot in Illinois. In fact, they filed some kind of legal action, and that would companion the legal actions, much like what happened in Colorado and in Maine. And this reporter, she goes out, and I know her. She's a friend of mine. Her name is Sarah Schulte. She did this story where she interviewed the person filing the legal action to get Trump off the ballot in Illinois. Then she went to the University of Chicago and talked to a law professor who basically sized up the situation and what it meant, what would have to be proven by each side legally. He was in the middle. Then she went out and did an interview, not an interview. She took a statement from the Republican Party of Illinois. Then she said, Sarah Schulte, ABC 7 News. And I looked at the story and I said, you mean to tell me that with 12 million people in this state, you couldn't find someone who could express the other side of that story, which is to say, well, I think Trump should be on the ballot. I mean, that kind of thing. You couldn't find that. You had to go get a statement from something as irrelevant, really, as the Republican Party of Illinois. You couldn't go find anybody, nobody, to tell you that Trump should be on the ballot. No,
I didn't see that story, but I did see stories from Channel 5 and Channel 2 where there were people who were saying
absolutely,
that,
absolutely. But to think that the former place where I used to be the political editor, they had management in the newsroom that allowed that to happen. Man, I always had both sides of the story. Always had both sides of the story. And it's inexcusable that something like that should happen at a major news outlet. I mean, you don't even have to get in the car and drive to the person. You can do what we're doing right now, which is to get them on Zoom or whatever it is and interview them like that.
Which is what most of them are doing now anyway.
Yeah, but that's fine. as long as you get the information out there.
Right.
But to
Right.
think that they would do that at my alma mater, if you will, that it has devolved to that, it's very troubling.
Well, I think more questions need to be raised, and you can raise those questions, and I think we should. I forget the gentleman's name. He invited me to these meetings that he has with all of the local majors. You may know his Redmond. He is a part of an organization. It's about holding the media outlets accountable in terms of their reporting. And he invited me to a couple of those, and I was on one with Channel 2 and one with Channel 7. It was very interesting, and I think that more of that needs to be engaged. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a healthy thing to make sure that the news outlets are giving us all or as much of the information fair and balanced. To the general public, as well as holding people, in high places accountable. I think that was a good thing. So at first I was not going to attend because I was like, I don't want to be on, somebody just screaming and yelling. But it wasn't that. It was, they were asking real questions. I mean, there were some disagreements, obviously. But overall, I think it's a good platform. And I like to participate in that, should I be invited again. But I think it's necessary.
Speaking of the newspaper, Sun-Times had a very interesting story. I think it was last weekend about the 7th Ward. You live in the 7th Ward, right? You live in 7th?
No, I used to live in the 7th. I'm in the 5th, and I'm moving to the 6th.
But you're very familiar with 7th. Remember we talked last week about the fact that Venezuelan migrants were cleaning up 79th and Essex.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the story broke that there have been 460 Venezuelan migrants who have moved into the neighborhood of 79th and Colfax, 79th and Essex.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a property owner there, a developer, who is saying, hey, come move into my vacant apartment buildings if you are a migrant, and I will basically, he says he's put $150,000 into this effort to move 500 or nearly 500 migrants, could be more than that by now, into that area around 79th and Colfax, 79th and Essex. That's a lot of people in a very short period of time who have moved into that area. And Greg Mitchell, I believe that's his name, Greg Mitchell,
yes,
who is the alderman in the 7th Ward, is livid. He actually threatened this property owner's well-being, physical safety, if he continued to do this without clearing it with him first. But what it said to me,
wait a minute. Wait, hold.
Look it up, man.
No. I'm asking for, wait. You mean to tell me that the story is reporting that the alderman, and I'm really trying to, because I have my own opinion there, and it's not very.
I know.
So, but I'm trying to stay on point. You mean to tell me that the alderman is threatening a private property owner?
Reportedly,
yes.
And a private owner.
A private property owner who wants to give shelter to some people,
500
in what,
in South Shore,
500 people.
It's probably 500 now. It was 460.
No, he is saying that he's willing to give shelter to 500 people.
You ever heard of a guy named Greg Amator? Is it Amator? I think it's Amator.
Greg Amator?
He's quoted in the story. Amator. He owns buildings in South Shore, big apartment buildings that are vacant. Vacant.
Wait, so he owns vacant apartments?
They're vacant. He owns buildings. You know those big
Okay.
buildings.
Yeah,
in
I get it,
South
but
Florida.
well,
He
that
owns.
name is
He
not
owns
familiar
them.
because I used to own a lot of property
Okay.
over in that area. I don't own a lot of
I,
property over there anymore.
I might be mispronouncing his name. What you've got to do is go get this story, Google it, Google the alderman, and you'll find this story in the news section of the Google. But here's my point. This guy, he's putting up 150,000, but these people will be paying him. Don't worry about that. They're going to be eventually. They're going to be paying him rent.
Right.
They're moving into South Shore. He also owns property in Roseland.
There's another guy on the north side that's doing the same thing.
Okay. They're also doing it in Auburn Gresham. They're doing it in Woodlawn, which we talked about last week. But it appears that of these 30,000 plus now migrants, when they get through the shelter process, they're going to end up in neighborhoods that right now are peopled by predominantly Black people. And I think what we're seeing, the Black people who have moved out and left those vacant buildings, those are the places where migrants in Chicago are going to be living in the future. You talk about a lot about 10 by 10 to win, getting the Black wards organized. Learn to speak Spanish. Speak it fluently, because so many of these people that are coming to Chicago are going to the Black wards. Get ready for
his name is Chris Amatori.
You're reading the story now, right? Got it.
Yeah,
okay.
A property manager and real estate investor is providing beds and food and paying for it all himself. Food was delivered Thursday to the family staying in South Shore. Yeah, I have to look a little further into that because I do know that I know that there are two agencies. One is Black and one is not Black. That has been contracted by the city to provide food, 3 meals a day for the migrant. There's a Black woman who, has a substantially large contract doing that. There's two food agencies that's doing it, and so I have to look further into that.
Well, I mean, but my point is this. I mean, I think the people need a roof over their heads, but I think that Black folks should understand, you who live in those neighborhoods are being replaced. Your neighborhood is going to change. If you're an alderman and you're in the 7th Ward, Greg Mitchell, whoever it is, it's Greg Mitchell in the 7th.
Yeah.
When you talking about moving hundreds, maybe thousands of people, because there's a lot of vacant property in 7th, into your ward, those are voters potentially. In city elections, those are people that have their own agenda, and ultimately, I gotta believe that they're going to be voting. They're going to be voting in city elections first before national, but they're going to be voting. That alderman had better wake up and connect the dots, because the neighborhoods in Chicago are changing. This city is changing right before our eyes, and the people in charge are allowing this to happen. They know what's going on. They're fully aware of what's happening. And who are those people? That Mr. Amator is bringing into the 7th Ward. To whom are they loyal? Mr. Amator. He is the guy giving them shelter. What he wants, he'll get.
There's a guy. It's funny that you say that, because there was a guy who was reported on the north side of Chicago who has some vacant buildings, and but his attitude was that it's not purely about the money with him. He says, I've done well.
I'm rolling my eyes, by the way.
It's not purely, well, that's okay, but I'm just telling you what he said. I'm just reporting the
I know, I
information. He
know.
says it's not purely with the money that we're all in this together. Those are his words. And but look, so it's interesting because that area where he's talking about, and in this story, I happen to know, quite well. I lived in that ward for 23 plus years, and that is a very, very challenging area. Very, very challenging between 75th Street and 79th Street. Yates, from Phillips over to Exchange, is a very, very challenging area. They call it Terrortown,
Hmm.
in that area. I owned, a number of buildings over there. I recently sold the last building that I had in that area, um, which I wish I would have held on to, but I sold it in that community. So, but there's some beautiful property over there that's been vacant for years. I had been trying to get the previous, um, well, this alderman is just, I don't think I'm going to waste a whole lot of energy, but there's not much there. Anyway, but the seventh ward, between the seventh ward and the 10th ward, they have the largest vacant landmass, almost the size of building another city. That I just recently met the current alderman of the 10th ward, but the alderman of the 7th ward, it is just, there is no representation there. They have no ideas. They have no ability. And we need to do everything that we can to get somebody who has an ounce of a brain, and some vision for that ward, because there is tremendous opportunity there that can happen. And since the Jacksons have left, we had a drunk to take their place, and then we have what we have now.
Well,
Um,
but the bottom line point is, wherever you see high vacancies in the city, whether it's Inglewood, whether it's Grand Crossing, whether it's South Shore, whether it's Auburn Gresham, wherever you see these vacant buildings, that's where the migrants are going. And those vacant buildings, the vast majority of them, are on the south side, and they're in neighborhoods that are populated by Black people.
well, I see that as an
Understand?
opportunity.
Under,
I
it,
see it
well,
as an opportunity.
well, but I'm saying
I don't see it as a
opportunity.
problem.
There's a lot of speculation. I know because I heard it early on in this thing that, well, we can handle people that will go to Little Village where there are language situations where people will be able to assimilate faster in places like Little Village where their Spanish won't be such an impediment. No, no, they're not going to Little Village. They're not going to Little Village. They are going to the neighborhoods where Black people live on the south and west sides, where the rents are the lowest in the city. That's where they're going to be initially.
Well,
And
the rents are not the rents are not the lowest. The
black
rents are
folks
not the
are
lowest there.
relatively whatever, but the rents are lower. The rents
No,
are
they're
lower
not.
in South. Wait a minute. The rents are lower in South Shore than they are in the West Loop. We have migrants here in the West Loop who are living in hostels. They will not be living here a long time. Not at this rate. They won't be. They're going to go to the places where the rents are lower, and Black people live in many of those places.
Well,
Mark.
mhm.
Let me finish on this, and I have nothing else to say about this. Black folks are being replaced by this process. And when those people come over the border, they are not coming just to the Black neighborhoods in Chicago. They're going to the poorest neighborhoods, the neighborhoods where they can begin their lives in America. Black folks have got to connect the dots. We have to connect the dots. and it's happening all over the country. They're
Listen,
going crazy.
I don't disagree.
In Denver, in New York, wherever Black folks live, we are the ones on whom the migrant population is being delivered to. We're getting it. We're getting it. And if you don't like it, express yourself.
Well,
Express yourself.
here's
do something different.
here's what I want for, and I'm glad you mentioned 10 by 10 to win, because we had a great meeting. I mean, we had almost 50 people that turned out in a meeting this past week. That number may be, hopefully we double that number, but there was a great energy in that meeting. And we had about almost all of the Black wards represented in that meeting, and some suburban communities last week. So I think that this is a critical time. And I believe, as I was out Sunday and with some young people, I was out Sunday with a very young person Sunday that were passing out the mission statement for organizing a Black voting block, and got approached by some people who were not Black and asked, well, can other people be involved? I said, well, you can support financially. I said, but this is for Black people, by Black people, for Black interest. And they said, well, don't you think that's a little bit racist? I said, no, it's not racist. I said, because we're not anti anybody else. We're just pro-Black. And we have to make sure that we look out for the interest of Black people who have been passed over for decades, where we live here in the city of Chicago and the county of Cook. They agreed with that. They agreed with that after I explained it. It's not being anti-you or anti-anybody else. We just know that we have to take a different approach. If we don't want to continue to get passed over, we have to take a different approach. And so, and I think that people recognize that and identify with that. And I think that we, as you say, and I agree, that if we don't pay attention now, I don't know that we ever will pay attention. But speaking of migrants, did you realize, I didn't know this before I saw the 60 Minutes story the other night, that the greatest number of people coming across the border are Chinese?
You're absolutely right. In fact, the Chinese there's this road in America that goes from Prudhoe Bay in Alaska all the way to the tip of South America. One road. But there's this place in Panama where they haven't built the road yet. And they call it the Darien Gap. And it's a jungle, snakes, crocodiles, whatever. And they have to walk through that. But at the Darien Gap, the Chinese in Panama have erected buildings, shelters, places for people to go, and transportation through, or safe passage through the Darien. You saw that was on the story?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Listen, they're showing, these people are not walking through these tracks. There was one woman who said she sold her house and it cost her $14,000. She was a school teacher. She left her 2 kids by, and they were asking her what was her reason for coming here.
Where's she from?
China.
Right.
Yeah, she's from China. It cost her $14,000 to come here, but she flew. I forgot where she flew to. She flew to Ecuador or someplace.
Right, Ecuador.
Ecuador.
You don't need a passport.
You don't need a passport or a visa
to get in. You just go.
Right. So, so many of these people, and they said, 60 Minutes was at this one section of this guy's property. I forget what it's called. I was going to pull the clip up, but and all these people are just coming through, and then they arrest them. Obviously, they arrest them and take them to the point of where they have to go and get processed. But I mean, one woman who says that she was a bilingual, Spanish-English bilingual person who volunteered there, she said that weeks would go by that you would not see a Hispanic person coming across the border, that there were these Chinese people flooding in. I mean, just flooding in to the tune of the 35,000 people
Okay.
that they said.
Okay,
So,
Mark. Mark.
yeah.
So is that not an invasion?
I don't call it an invasion.
Okay.
I don't
I
call it that.
do. Do you do you
Here's
think
what
that
here's what I think that the problem is. Here's what I think that the problem is now is that yes, it's a problem, and it's a problem that's impacting all of us. And what I think is just ridiculous that now that you have these people in Congress who now want to use this situation and say, you know what, we're going to just let it be a problem. We're going to let it be a problem, and we're going to risk it becoming a more, or being exacerbated when we now have we have a plan in place with resources in place to help those people at the border, to put another 1,300 people at the border. What do they call them? Border agents. And we're not going to do it. I think that is, as you said, the height of hypocrisy.
Okay.
The height of hypocrisy. But beyond that, I think it's just absolutely ridiculous that you would risk the safety, security, whatever, for political gain. I think it's just
So what did Joe
horrifying.
Biden do? What did Joe Biden do? He totally dismantled what Trump had in place that was working. I'll let you speak. Let me speak. Okay. He totally dismantled what Trump had in place to control this situation. And the reason that the Republicans are letting Joe Biden are not going to do anything with it between now and November is because they want the American public to punish Joe Biden for what he's done, which is open the border to any and everybody and have this horrific problem happen. And the Republicans want Joe Biden to pay the price for this in November. So they're not going to do anything. It was politics when Joe dismantled and reversed everything Trump had in place. It's politics now that the Republicans won't do anything between now and November. And the American public is furious. This is the number one issue now.
No, it's not.
It was the number one issue in Iowa, the number one issue in New Hampshire. It will be the number one issue in this election.
Yeah, okay. It was the number one issue in New Hampshire and Iowa, where 3 black people live.
It won't be. Okay. It won't be the number one issue.
It will not be.
If Joe succeeds in starting World War III between now and November, and there's a pretty good chance he'll do that as well. But this guy has been a total disaster on immigration, on foreign affairs. He's been a total disaster. And
that's your opinion.
He needs to go, which I tell you every week, this guy has thoroughly screwed up during the few minutes a day that he's awake.
Yeah, okay. All right. Listen, the immigration issue, as Jerome Powell addressed, I think I want to play that clip from Jerome Powell as he speaks about the labor market and immigration. This is Jerome Powell with Scott Pelley on 60 Minutes.
What are the important factors that cause the labor market to stabilize?
One was just the return of workers. Several million people were just gone from the labor force for whatever reason. Many of them didn't want to go back to their old jobs because of COVID or because they just didn't want to be. They had moved on with their lives. So there was a desperate shortage of workers. And what happened is we expected people to come right back into the workforce in 2022. They mostly didn't. And then we thought, well, maybe that's not going to happen. And then it happened in 2023. We had a combination of rising labor force participation in prime age workers. And we also had with that, we had a resumption of immigration. So there was really no immigration net or very little during the pandemic. But In 2023, we saw immigration move back up to the levels that would have been normal before the pandemic. And those two things together made a real difference in labor supply. So it's really a supply story. That's the main thing I would point to.
Why was immigration important?
Because immigrants come in and they tend to work at a rate that is at or above that for non-immigrants. Or immigrants who come to the country tend to be in the workforce at a slightly higher level than Americans do, but that's largely because of the age difference. They tend to skew younger.
Why is immigration so important to the economy?
First of all, immigration policy is not the Fed's job. We don't set immigration policy, we don't comment on it. I will say over time, though, the U.S. economy has benefited from immigration, and frankly, just in the last year, a big part of the story of the labor market coming back into better balance is immigration returning to levels that were more typical of the pre-pandemic era.
The country needed the workers.
It did.
So, people can gaslight the whole immigration issue all they want to because of, their political interests. But the fact is that Joe Biden did not undo or reverse policy because Trump didn't have a policy in place. He didn't have a policy in place. What Trump did was shut down the asylum system. That's all he did. They did not put into place a policy. They didn't put in place a policy. In fact, when they tried to put in place a policy, Congress would not act on it because the Republicans did not want to put it into place to correct it. So there was no policy. This was a halt because of the pandemic, and he shut down the asylum system with no fix in place of the border or the immigration policy, period.
Oh, well, there was nobody sleeping at the airport during Trump. There was nobody. There were a fraction of the people coming across the border during Trump. People were told to stay in Mexico until they got an appointment to come through the border. I just remember what was going on just a few 3.5 years ago and what's going on now. That's all I can really say. And I think that's how most Americans see it. And I think that Joe, as they say, has some explaining to do. And he isn't doing it very well right now because his approval ratings, I guess they call them, are way lower than any president in history, really, this close to an election. I don't really think he's going to run again. I can't see it. They'll come up with something better.
All right. Well, we shall see. We shall see.
What do you, let me, we talked about this. What about this? I mean, I see now that the Biden administration is involved, let's say, in 4 different conflicts right now. 4 different wars. Ukraine, you've got the Gaza situation with Israel where we're supplying the weapons. Then you've got this thing in Iraq now, where they had this big where they attacked some so-called militias in Iraq, and now then they're shooting people in Yemen now. That's 4 different shooting situations in the world, and the United States is very involved in all of them. What's going on, man? It's a frightening situation with all these new conflicts that have come about over the past really couple of years.
Yeah, well, I don't know that I do know that they're not new conflicts. They've just been inflamed for one reason or the other. But I think that that I'm happy that the former person is not there to be dealing with this. And there is a sense that some of these people have felt like they that they had support to be able to do some of these things that they want to do in terms of creating conflicts. But I think that the country and the allies will do all that they can to keep it from escalating. I certainly hope that they do, because I don't want to see men and women from our military on the ground and dying in these conflicts, for, whatever. That's why, I'm hoping it looks like they're about to reach some sort of agreement to make sure that Ukraine has what it needs to stop Putin from succeeding there. Because if he succeeds there, he's not going to just stop there, and then we would be enjoined in a war. We actually have to put our military people boots on the ground, and I don't want that to happen at all. So that's why I think it's important for Ukraine to succeed, because we don't need to have our people on the ground in these wars, and I think that the president and the Joint Chiefs need to do all that they can, and I think that they are doing all that they can to stop these conflicts from escalating to that point.
Yeah, I think that I think it's really bad news if what you say is true, because Ukraine, I've read quite a bit about it. It appears now as though the Ukrainian regime, Zelensky, that's his name, is about to collapse. He wants to fire their principal general. The Russians are pretty much have the choice to overrun the country if they want. It appears to be lost. Ukraine appears to be lost, and they want another $60 billion. Joe Biden wants to send another $60 billion to Ukraine, and they pretty much lost.
That's the American portion.
Mike, let me finish. The American portion, yeah, the Europeans are going to send, I think, $12 billion a year over the next 4 years, but that's not going to be military stuff. That's basically economic aid. But militarily, it appears now as though the Ukrainians have lost. They don't have any other people to put on the front lines because the Russians have killed so many of them. And I guess if what you say is true, we're going to be involved in a ground war in Europe, because it appears now as though the Russians have prevailed in Ukraine. At least that's the reading I have from reading many overseas sources, because the American media is not giving us the full truth of what's happening in Ukraine. And we are, but see, I don't think the Russians are going to do that. I think they want the parts of Ukraine that speak Russian, that are historically Russian, and they'll stop there. But if what you say is true, then I think we could be looking at a ground war in Europe. And as Joe Biden says, American boys fighting Russian boys, because it appears though the Russians have the upper hand there. And what can you say? I hope you're wrong, but if you're right, it's too bad. That's really a tough situation.
Well, only time is going to tell us whether that happens. I hope that we don't. I hope that they're successful, so that we don't have to have our people engage in another senseless war. What about? I'm going to switch gears. What about the social media was on the hot seat last week when, and for the first time in a long time, and Democrats and Republicans were on the same page. I mean, they were ripping the social media heads to shred because of this escalation of suicides as a result of people being attacked and bullied, young people being attacked and bullied on these social media outlets, Instagram, TikTok, and Zuckerberg and the heads of the major sources, man, they grilled them. I mean, that was the first time that I've heard Lindsey Graham and what's our senator's name here?
Durbin.
Dick Durbin and Democrats and Republicans all on the same page. It was refreshing, but you know, and they had all these parents and all these family members in the background with pictures of their family members who had died by suicide as a result of the bullying on social media. I mean, one Josh Hawley, I guess, shamed um, with Zuckerberg into standing up right in the hearing and turning to the family members. Of course, they thought it was disingenuous, but turning to the family member and making an apology right there in the hearing room. It was rather dramatic. I listened to some of it as I was driving in the car, but it was rather steaming. But I thought, for me, it was refreshing to see the Republicans and Democrats actually working together to solve some problem.
What problem did they solve? I mean,
Well, they didn't solve any problem, but working together to solve one. But what I did learn is that, you know, that you can't sue any of the social media outlets. It's absolutely crazy. Now, that was put into place to give them a kickstart, right? They got more than a kickstart now, but you cannot. I think it's called Title 230 or something like that. Lindsey Graham is asking for that to be removed. And because these people are so powerful and because they have so much money that they can buy these politicians not to do anything, that they can sue you for some liableness against them, but we cannot sue them. They cannot be sued. I think that is absolutely ridiculous that these people cannot be held accountable
yeah,
according to.
yeah. Well, yeah, they're being treated like the phone company. You can't sue the phone company because of something that was said between two people on the phone. The phone company's harmless, and they have the same. They're being treated like the phone company, and people are saying that a lot of people are saying that they shouldn't be because they take political positions on issues. They are more than just the wires or the means of communication.
Right.
They are
Between
actually
two people.
Yeah, they are actually getting
Publishers.
involved. Yeah, absolutely. That's the
publishers.
word. They're publishers, and they should be sued, but they aren't. And I think that needs to be changed. But again, if they can throw money around, like many of these lobbies can throw money around, these politicians who live with the money, I mean, they live by money. I don't mean to digress, but that's what's going on in Gaza right now. I mean, you've got a lot of lobby saying, "Hey, Mr. Netanyahu is doing the right thing," and the politicians won't react to
Right.
to the scenes of little babies.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to digress, but I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. The money is running Washington right now, and
Right.
you have as many people angry at the Republicans as they are angry at the Democrats. The Democrats and the Republicans are all slaves to money,
Oh, absolutely.
and that's the
Samuel,
problem.
yeah,
That's the problem.
yeah, that's absolutely the problem. Citizens United needs to be completely reversed, but it's not going to happen. It needs to be reversed, but that opened the floodgates. What was it, 2018? They opened the floodgates for people to go in. And Mitt Romney was, I guess, at that time, he was sort of the de facto promoter when he started saying, well, corporations are people too, so they should be able to put as much money in to politics as possible. It was, you know, a terrible decision, and it certainly needs to be reversed because it is just literally buying, you know, I guess they're called political slaves. Our legislators are slaves to these people who own them.
The legislators, the president, the vice president, all of them. It's just not Congress. It goes as far as the White House.
I don't
And
disagree with you. I don't disagree with you that money needs to be removed from politics. It just needs to be removed from politics because we see the poisoning of it. And you know, it's not like we didn't have warning signs from people who talked about this before. But it is having it's a horrible erosion of debate, because there is no debate.
Hey man, what time is it?
It is 8:19.
Oh, it's after 8 o'clock.
Yeah,
Because I wanted to bring up another topic, and I wanted
go
to be
right
sure,
ahead.
I wanted to be sure all the kids were in bed. What's the-
Well, all the kids are in bed because we don't have any children watching us, I'm sure.
I know. I'm just, hey man, I'm just joking because
Well, you
I
better
want
hurry up
to-
and get it out. You better
Okay,
hurry up
yeah.
and get it out, because the old
Okay.
people might be falling asleep.
Okay, here you go, man.
Yeah.
What's up with your girl, Fonnie Willis, man? What's up with that?
What do you mean?
Fonnie Willis, man,
Well, you brought it up. What do you mean?
the Fulton County prosecutor who has
So?
admitted that she is having an affair with
So
her
what?
lead prosecutor
So
in
what?
the Trump case. So what?
It's not a big. It happens all the time.
Oh, it
It happens all the time.
happens all the time. Really?
Yes, it does.
Man,
Yes,
what happened
all
to
the
me,
time.
man? I missed.
Yeah,
It happens all the time.
Yes, it
That-
does. It's
that-
not a big deal.
That the
It's not a big
you're
deal.
trying to say that's not a big deal.
Because it's not. Because
this
it's not
woman-
anything that's
This,
new.
this woman has taken on the highest profile case, very questionable in my mind, in the country.
Well, it's
she had-
questionable in your
she
mind
had-
because you haven't read
she
the
had-
facts.
She had the only case that where Donald Trump really was in, criminal case that is, was really in some jeopardy.
Mhm.
And now we're finding out that she doesn't have any penis control and that she's gotten involved with a guy that she hired. and
Lawyers,
that is-
lawyers are married to people that they're on the same side in
Man.
defending cases and
Funny.
prosecuting case. This is
Funny.
this is
Funny.
this is nothing.
man. Look,
This is
look,
this
look,
is not news. This
It
is not news.
Is it not news?
No, it's not.
news. It is.
It's only news to people who
Man,
don't
it's-
understand it, because
sala-
it happens
it's
all the time.
salacious. It's salacious news. It's the kind of news that you really don't want to have to talk about.
Well,
If
it's
you-
not,
if
because it's
she
none
was-
of your
if she
business
was
who's it's none of
prosecuting
it's none
somebody-
of your
Look,
business
man,
or none of
if
my
she was-
business
It is
whose
my
penis
business.
she's
It is
dealing
my
with.
business. It is my business.
No,
because
it's not. It's none of your
She
business.
is the lead prosecutor
It's none
she
of your
is the
business who she
person
sleeps with.
who has formed the prosecution of a former president of the United States. She put herself out there, and now we're finding out that she's going through this thing where, and you know what it reminded me of? It reminded me a lot of what happened to Carol Moseley Braun back in the 1990s, where she got involved and it killed her political career. This can kill Fonnie Willis's political career,
Yeah,
and
no, it
very well might kill her case against
No, it
Donald
won't.
Trump.
Yeah, well,
We'll see.
you know,
We'll see.
I-
but
you-
I think
you
it's,
can-
it's a hell of
you
a
can
story,
put
man.
you can put your cake.
Man,
you can put your
he's
you can
gotta be
put your
kidding.
cake. Let me help you. You can take your cake and your and candles and put them away, because
Mark,
this will
Mark.
prove to be no big deal, because everybody wants to be in somebody's bedroom. I don't understand. I do not
Shelby.
understand. I do not
Shelby.
understand
Shelby
what
said it
these
twice.
what the interest is. I don't understand what the interest is
Hey,
of
man.
people wanting to be in somebody's bedroom. I don't understand why you all are so interested in whose penis is going in somebody else's vagina. I don't understand it.
Shelby says Mark is saying that with a straight face. And Mark, I got to give
Of
you
course,
credit.
I'm saying it with a
You
straight
did
face
say
because
that with a straight face.
I know it.
Mark, is that Shiloh?
No, that's not Shiloh. Shiloh
Oh,
has
wait
a
a minute,
much
hold
bigger
on.
voice than that.
Wait a minute. Oh,
No, that's you.
That's Coco.
That's
my
Coco.
goodness.
That's not Shiloh.
Yeah, the Shiloh. Woo, woo, woo.
Yeah, yeah. If that was Shiloh, boy, I'd have to take him to the vet.
Or maybe you did and he got neutered.
Well, no, he's been neutered. Yeah, no, he's sitting over there
Yeah.
laying down. We called his name and he woke him up. But yeah.
Yeah.
Coco has gotten excited. See, you even got Coco excited because Coco doesn't want to be. Is Coco a male or a female?
She's female. Female.
She,
Yeah.
yeah, she doesn't want anybody talking
Yeah.
about what's going on, you know,
Oh,
in
yeah,
her
yeah.
private life.
Well, yeah, funny, man. Funny.
Coco's
I think,
telling you to
I think,
mind your business.
I think you can stick a fork in Fonnie at this point.
Oh yeah,
I
I
think you
got
stick
it.
a fork in her. I
Yeah,
mean, Nathan? What's his name? Nathan? Yeah, he didn't stick a fork in her, but you can stick a fork in.
yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's it. That's a
okay,
done deal, man. What else is up,
okay.
man? What else? What else is going on in the world?
Well, you know, and we done talked about stuff that's happening, you know, in the world. Now, you know, I thought it was funny. I thought this was funny, and she's having such a hard time. I mean, I don't know. Somebody needs to get a hold of her. Your girl Nimrata, dealing with this
Nimrata,
rape.
talk to me.
Nimrata, Nikki Haley. That's, you know,
Oh,
her name is Nimrata.
oh, okay. Yeah. Somebody definitely needs to get a hold of her, man.
Man, somebody
She's,
she needs
she
needs some
needs help.
help. Somebody needs to get her hold of her
But,
and help her
but let me
to, you
go
know,
ahead.
because yeah, she is just, man, she just spills all over herself.
Well, no,
Man,
let me tell you
it's
something. But
shameful.
let me tell you something. Nimrata is typical.
Oh yes,
She is. I'm telling you, Nimrata, in terms of what she has said, for instance, about slavery and racism and such,
yes.
she speaks like a lot
White
of
folks,
no,
like a lot of white folks.
no, not like white folks, not like white folks.
Oh
She
yeah,
speaks like migrants from India. Indian Americans have the highest per household income in the country. It's over 6 figures. White folks, it's only around 60,000. Black folks are like 40. White folks are like 60. And then in between, you have other groups. But Indian Americans have the highest per household income in the country. They don't, they're out there, man. And you have 3 Indian Americans now who have been this year on the presidential quest. You've got Kamala, who's the vice president of the United States, who is half Indian, who grew up with an Indian mother most of her time. You have Vivek Ramaswamy, who wants to end affirmative action. That was the first thing out of his mouth when he ran for president.
well
Remember?
yeah.
Remember? And
Yeah.
now you have Nikki saying racism is not a problem. If I'm making over 100 grand a year per household, racism isn't a problem. A lot of people believe that. You have other migrants who are coming into the country from places that are like the Congo, which are blue-black, who are selling everything they own to try to get to the United States to deal with some of this systemic racism. I'm telling you, man, the migrant population, they don't think America is
Well, look,
racist. Listen, let me finish. They don't think America is racist.
yeah, until they get here.
In fact, they believe America is the least racist country
Yeah,
on the
until they
planet.
get here.
What? But well, we'll see what happens. But right
Until
now,
they get here.
these 7 million people that Joe Biden is letting into the country, the vast majority of them are quote unquote people of color. They don't think this is a racist country. In fact, the people who speak most about racism,
But that's not Nikki though.
Mark, you're not letting me finish. The people who speak most about racism in America are the descendants of slaves. We know what it is. We know where it's been. They don't. And they are coming and they're talking about getting rid of affirmative action. Yeah, because
Yeah.
they don't need it. They know that they come here to work hard to make that 6-figure per household income. That's what they're looking at. They don't think it's racist. We think it's racist because it's up here
No,
in
'cause
our
it is.
heads. It's
No.
it's embedded in our heads.
Yeah, because it is.
That's what they're.
Nikki,
that's what's happening, man.
Nimrata's path. She
telling
knows
you, man.
better. She knows better to respond to that, and she's been just dripping all over herself ridiculously.
That's what she
But
believes, man.
No. She
She
does not
believes
believe
that.
it. She doesn't
She does
believe it.
believe it.
No,
She
she
believes
doesn't.
it, man.
She's responding
You
to
know,
a,
she
an,
said what
a,
she believes.
she
She
doesn't
said
believe
what
it.
she believes,
Her
man.
experience, Charles, her experience, her father could not get a job. You're talking about a highly educated man who could not get a job teaching in American white institutions. The
Mhm.
only place that he could get hired was HBCUs. That's
Okay.
the only place that he could get hired. Her mother, who is a highly intelligent woman who could not get a job and had to go to making clothing, the only people that would buy her clothing were black people. White people would not buy from him. The house that they lived in, that they bought, they were told, you cannot even have black folks over here into this house, and you have to sell it. If you sell it back to the white folks that you bought it from. So she does not believe this. This is something she's trying to play to, what she thinks that she has to play to a certain audience.
Okay.
And
Can I,
she's
can I,
she's
can
dripping
I
all
speak?
over herself.
Can I speak? You
Yeah,
talked
sure.
about the struggles of her mother and father, and now their daughter has been governor of South Carolina and is running for the president of the United States. Do you think that they have overcome whatever racism there was? That's important. That's an important fact for all of us to believe. When we look at our children, we cannot discourage them because they could run
We are
for
not
president of the
discouraging.
United
Come on,
States.
stop
You
that,
are.
Charles.
Well, why are you talking
Stop
about what
that
happened?
nonsense.
Why are
Stop
you
the
talking
nonsense.
about
Stop the
why?
nonsense, Charles.
Why are you
Nobody is
talking
discouraging
about
their
their
children.
mother and father?
No,
when
no,
in
because
fact their
I'm telling
daughter
you,
is
I'm telling
outrageously
you, I'm
successful.
telling you,
Oh, come on, brother.
I'm telling you that
Come on,
she
man.
knows better than what she says. That's why I'm telling you this. This is
She
not
knows,
something that she
but she's
knows
not.
better than what she is saying.
You finished?
Period.
You finished?
No, but go ahead.
You're not, but she's overcome it. That's the thing. She struggled. She's not living in the past. She's not living in what her mother and father did. They are moving on up.
Yeah,
They
because
are on their way. They are on their way. And
Nimrata
that's
and her
why,
mother,
and she's sitting on the board of defense contractors
Nimrata
and
and her
such.
mother.
No,
Well, that
come
well,
on, man.
yeah,
That's
well,
like
black
you.
folks,
That's like you, man.
black folks. No, you
That's
don't
like
put me
you.
in that. Don't put me in that.
Look,
that
man,
in
I'll
that.
put you in this category.
Black folk. No, you can't, because you
Let me
don't know
put
the
you in-
story.
Let me
No, you
put you in
can't.
this category.
I can tell my story. You
grew
can't.
Up, you grew up in Richmond Heights, Florida, and you became a developer of real estate in Chicago, Illinois. Was
Yeah,
that,
with a lot
was that-
with a lot of help from
Yeah,
some people who helped me
yeah.
along the way.
Right,
All right.
right.
So a lot of
And you-
people
but you
with
did
some
it.
people, but
You
that's
did
not
it.
that is not
You
the
did
normal
it.
path for the average black person. So please
Of
don't
course
use my
not,
situation.
because you're not
Okay,
average.
then.
You
So
made
so
sure that
don't
you
use
wouldn't
my
be average.
situation.
I was
No,
average.
no.
I was an average
Black
person.
no, you
I
weren't.
was,
No, you weren't.
I
No,
was
you
a
weren't.
little black
Listen,
kid
you had
growing
to
up
be
in Rockville,
Charles.
Missouri,
Charles,
man.
you had to
That's
be
what I
twice
did.
as good. You had to be twice as good, twice
And
as
you know
sharp.
what?
Twice. Let me
You know
finish.
what?
Hold on. You had to be twice as good, twice as sharp as the next white person who probably had half, if that, half the ability, but they would have gotten and got more shots than you got.
Really?
Because
They did.
yeah, they did.
Man, I went to the top of my industry, brother.
Yeah,
I mean,
hey,
and you know why I got
Charles,
there?
you
Because I
went there.
worked at it.
You went there.
I
Of course,
worked
you had to,
hard,
and
man.
you had to work.
I
You had to
worked
work
at
twice
it.
as
And
hard. You had to be
any-
twice as good,
any-
and you
any
work
young
twice
black
as hard
person-
to do
any
it.
young
But
black person could do
there's
the
not.
same.
No, yeah, no,
Could do
that's
the
not
same,
true.
man.
That's
Yes,
simply
it
not
is.
the truth.
Oh, man,
That's simply not the truth.
If there's
That's
any
simply
young
not the
black
truth.
people out
There
there
are plenty
working,
of black
believe
people.
me,
There are plenty
you
of
can
black
do
people who
this.
have just
You
as greater
can do
talent,
this.
much smarter than you, much smarter than me, much more talented than us, that will not get the shot purely because they're black. So please don't try to dismiss this that anybody can do it. No, they
Oh,
can't.
anybody can do it. Anybody can do it.
No, they have the
Anybody
ability.
can do it.
They have the
Anybody
ability,
can
but they're not
do
given
it.
the shot to do it.
Anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. You've
Yeah,
got
okay.
to. What
Yeah.
has to happen? You cannot get down and use history to somehow.
No, you
limit
have to.
or put a cap on what
no.
you can do.
History
Man, you
does
can
not
do it.
limit
You
black
can do it,
folks.
man. You can
History
do it.
does not limit black folks. There are no black
it-
parents out
does
there.
it-
There are no black parents, Charles.
does
There's
it
no
limit
black
Indian
parents out
folks?
there. I'm not I'm concerned about black folk. There are no black parents out there telling their children you can't make it because you're black. What they're telling them is you have to work hard, you have to work twice as hard, you have to overcome what you're going to face in this world of people who are going to judge you purely because of the pigmentation of your skin. They are preparing their children. They are not putting their children in these disadvantaged positions that you continue to say that black folks are doing, and that you become the apologist for racist white folks.
I am not first of all, you must understand that in 15 to 20 years, the majority of people in this country will not be white. Right now, the people in the world, white people are a small minority of people in this world. There are 1.5 billion, that's with a B, Indians, 1.5 billion Chinese. There are a billion other people living in Asia, billions of more people living in Asia. White people will be the minority in this country in 15 to 20 years. My grandchildren will be working alongside more Asians than white people.
White people, Charles.
Listen, man. Listen,
white
listen.
people, Charles,
Mark, you
still
interrupted me, man.
Still
You
have
interrupted me, man.
much and control
Why-
much of the power.
You keep interrupting me, my brother. You're going to have to learn to sit back and listen. I'm trying to tell people that in 15 to 20 years, white people will not be the issue. I told you earlier that Indian Americans have the highest per capita income of any group in this country. You know, white people are like 5 or 6. Japanese Americans make more money. Chinese Americans make more money per household. Taiwanese Americans make more money than they do. They are a minority just like us. And in 15 to 20 years, that's no time. Don't say anything, Mark. Let me finish. Don't say anything. They will be a minority just like the rest of us. It's no mistake that Indian Americans are on the presidential scene right now because they have overcome whatever racism there is. Of course, there's racism. There's racism in India. There is a caste system in India that's far more damaging to people than racism is in this country. The caste system. Ever heard of that? That's where you're born poor, you stay poor for the rest of your life. You stay the lower caste. They don't do that in the United States. That's why they think it's such a wonderful place. You go to Africa, you have tribes that discriminate more against other tribes than white folks discriminate against us. And within those tribes, there are clans in places like Kenya, Nigeria, in Mali, clans that discriminate against other clans. Those people come here and say, wow, what an opportunity in America. Nowhere on the planet can a black man or woman accomplish more than in the United States of America. That's just a fact. Now, you want to find this place where it's going to be better, go for it. It's not. You have the best opportunity. So if you want to compete with somebody from Nigeria or somebody from Congo or India as a black man, get ready to work hard at it, And don't worry about these white folks because statutorily, that situation is past. That's Jim Crow. It's over. That's over. Now you got to go out there and make it, and you got to compete with more people of color, as they call it, than you compete with white people, because there's more of us. I'm finished.
Okay, back to this country. Just recently, 4 years ago, in the state of Florida, they passed legislation that ex-offenders who had served their time can register and vote. And what did the General Assembly do? What did the governor do there? They came up because they realized that 70% of the people who were ex-offenders were black that would get it. And there were over 1.7 million people who now can go into the electoral process or the democratic process. what did they do? They went and changed and made a new law to make sure that those people could not register and vote. And I think it was 4, 6, somewhere around there, 4 people under the law had followed the law, who had registered to vote, went and voted. And because they changed the law that you could not vote, and they came up with this, let's see, we have to figure out a way. No, they haven't paid all their restitution. So therefore, they have not completed their sentence.
I've heard that.
So
I
they
know this story,
cannot
right?
register to vote. So please miss me with the Jim Crow is over and the racism is over. And don't give me this nonsense about what's happening in the Congo and what's happening over in India. I'm talking about what's happening to black folks on the soil of the United States of America in 2024. And whether black folks or whether white folks are going to be the minority in 15 or 20 years, they are still operating with their racist. Look, white folks are the minority in South Africa. So what is that? What's the point about them being the minority? That's not going to that's not going to exclude them from being racist or being powerful over these racist systemic situations or processes. I mean, come on, miss me with that comparison.
Mark, I'm just telling you what the demographics are of the world and of the United States and where we're headed in this. I remember that what I said earlier about Vivek Ramaswamy, who ran for president against in the Republican primary, the first thing out of his mouth when he announced his candidacy was, "We got to get rid of affirmative action." When the Supreme Court decided against affirmative action, made its ruling against affirmative action at universities, Asians brought that case. These people who are coming into the country, they don't care about your Black history. They don't care about what we went through. Man,
I don't care that they don't care.
Well, you gotta care because
I don't care that they don't care.
But when they
what I care about is that black folks care.
You interrupted me again. They were the ones that brought the case to the Supreme Court. What I'm saying is black folks have to retrench and reposition ourselves in order to survive in this new world.
Oh, I agree.
These people who are coming over here, they don't know Sojourner Truth from Harriet Tubman, from Booker T. Washington, from any of this stuff. Man, they have lived in situations, man, that are much worse than what we are living in today. So they are the ones attacking our rights. Do you know that in Florida, man, they have a huge immigrant population?
They may be attacking our rights.
Yeah,
they may be attacking our rights, but they learned it from the Jim Crow specialist.
Whatever. But that's the reality of where we live. Now, if you want to leave, go for it. But I'm telling you,
who's talking about leaving? Where's that coming from?
I said that. I said if you want to leave to find something
who are you speaking to?
I'm speaking to whoever wants to leave.
Anybody? Who is saying that? Charles? Who is saying that they want to leave? Who is saying that they want to leave?
I'm telling you, you're not going to find a better situation on planet Earth in 2024. So you might as well dig in and work at it, man.
Wait. Are you saying that? Are you telling black folks that? Are you telling black folks to just be grateful at what white folks are doing to you? Is that what you're saying?
I'm telling you that we have struggled for 400 years to get to this point.
Well, you don't have to tell me that. We know about that.
Mark, you interrupted me again. And we have to do everything we can to take advantage of what's going on right now. And that means restoring our communities by restoring our families. That's what we have to do. We have to make it good, make it for our children, and we can't be negative and pick out every little and have Joe Biden tell us that white supremacy is a big problem.
We didn't need for Joe Biden to do it.
in the
we didn't need
past
for Joe.
year,
We
yeah,
didn't
because
need for we didn't need for Joe Biden to do that. White folks
because
showed that to us.
the
We didn't need for
Asians,
Joe Biden to tell us that.
the
White
Asians
folks showed
dismantled
it to us.
affirmative action.
Yeah,
The
white folks showed
Asians
it to us,
dismantled
especially
affirmative
down
action,
there
not the white
in
folks.
South Carolina.
The Asians dismantled affirmative action, not the white folks. And when you get more and more and more immigrants coming over,
First of
they
all, it
have
was
a
not
different-
an
they have
Asian
a-
who prosecuted the case. It was a
they
white
have
man
a-
who
but
prosecuted the
the
case.
Asians filed the case
It was a
on
white
behalf.
man who prosecuted the
Okay,
case, and
and
he
so you
has
don't
the
blame.
same organization,
But
and he's attacking
man,
this
look,
black group down in
man, the
Georgia. He's
world is
attacking this
changing.
black group down in
The
Georgia,
world is changing, my brother.
a black
Get
group of
ready for a
women,
new world, man. What you
a
gonna do?
black group of women who are advocating and
What you gonna do, man?
supporting
I'm telling you, man.
black-owned businesses, and this man is trying to sue them, trying to take them to court to
man.
stop them
Hey,
from
man,
supporting black businesses.
man, I feel the
Please,
same. Man, I
you
feel
know.
the same way about racist white people as you do. I'm just telling you that
It doesn't
as
sound like it.
the petition that we make to this country, which is to give us full citizenship rights, we're going to be making it to a bunch of people who didn't grow up here, who had nothing to do with slavery, and they are. And our petition is falling on deaf ears now. We have to go to work, and if somebody as dark as Vivek Ramaswamy, who's much darker than me, can go out there and say he's against affirmative action and get an audience and get support for that.
Not much.
What do you mean not much? They killed
not much.
affirmative action. They killed affirmative action.
Well,
Man,
they
come
did
on,
that.
man.
They did that before. They did that before him. White folks did that, not
Well,
Indians.
The Supreme
white
Court
folks
ruled,
did that.
The Supreme Court ruled
your Supreme
last
Court
year.
your
They
Supreme
ruled
Court
last
racist.
year.
Yeah,
They
all white
ruled
folks.
last year.
Yeah,
Whatever.
all white folks.
Whatever.
White
Whatever.
folks, not
Well,
Indians, not
whatever.
people from the Congo. White folks
Whatever.
did that.
You
right?
did it.
Okay.
You
White
on them
folks did that.
right? You on them
Well,
white
that's
folks.
who did it.
Oh
not
man, I'm
not
telling
not Vivek
Oh, man. I'm
Ramaswamy,
telling you, brother.
not Nirvana, not people from the Congo that you're talking about, not these European white folks in black robes on the Supreme Court did that, along with their handkerchief head Clarence Thomas. Okay, so that's who did that.
Oh man,
Right? None of those European people that you were talking about.
I'm just telling you,
that
man.
that you
It's a
try
different world
to
out there,
alleviate.
man. It's a different world out there, my
No,
brother.
it ain't no different world. It's the
different
same.
world.
It's
And
the
then-
same world for
and then-
white folks that they
and
don't
then-
want. They don't want. They,
My
listen,
brother,
they got
it's a
upset
different world,
they
man.
got upset when Barack Obama became president and Donald Trump,
That was a great
out
moment.
of his
That was-
out of his
you know,
anger, that's why he ran for president.
you know, man. When
That's why he ran for president. I mean, look, when
Can I
white
say
folks
something?
got upset with Barack Obama because he wore a
Can
tan
I say
suit.
something? Can I say something? That was, that was a great American moment when Barack Obama was elected president of the United States. I can remember
Not for
that
white
moment.
folks.
Listen, Mark. Listen. You gotta learn to listen.
Not for white folks.
Let Mark. If I can't speak here, I'll go do something.
Charles,
else.
you've been speaking for 15
won't-
minutes. Go ahead.
I didn't. You keep interrupting me, my brother. I was just trying to say that night, I think it was November 4th, 2008. I remember that night. There was a shimmering light in Grant Park. They had that stage lit like a mug. And man, Barack came out with Michelle and the two little girls, and he stood there on that stage. And I was on the air that night doing a live shot, and I had to choke back tears because I didn't want to cry on TV. But man, you talk about a great moment in America. Barack came out and he talked about hope and change. And I said, man, and I flashed back on so much of my own life and what I knew about the history of Black people in the country. And it was a great, great American moment. And I said, wow, this country has come a long way from the Middle Passage, or my people have come a long way from the Middle Passage. And I thought it was great. And that I've often think about that, what they, MAGA, Make America Great Again. Wow. America was great that night. And I would hope that in the future, there would be more moments like that. Because let's face it, 10 times as many white folks voted for Barack Obama as voted as black folks. Okay? I mean, a lot of white folks voted for Barack Obama. So there was hope. There was hope. And where did those people go? You're saying they didn't go far. They went back to some other place. But I say that that moment of hope was a seed that can move this country forward and move our people forward, because we got to that point because of whatever it was we were doing. We were fighting. We were fighting in courts. We were fighting in legislatures. We were fighting all over the country. And it worked. It worked. And we didn't, that night, what can I say? America was great. And if we can make America great again, Donald Trump irrelevant to that, that's what we need to do. We need to find whatever it was in Americans that elected Barack Obama and use that to move forward. And we can't just complain. We got to work. We got to work at it. And I've said it many times here that we have more in common with those so-called MAGA Republicans than we have in common with these elitists, billionaires, and such who are manipulating our vote for their own purposes. We have more in common again with the guy in the pickup truck who's living in rural Indiana than we have with the billionaire on the Gold Coast. Okay? That's what I believe. And we have to find the commonality with that group in order to move this country forward. That's what it's going to take. Not complaining about white folks in general. We got to find the common ground.
You done?
I'm done.
Yeah, well, but that's quite a delusion. Listen, those people, we have nothing in mindset in common with. There are people who live in those areas, who live in those rural areas, like in Mississippi, in South Carolina, in North Carolina, in Florida, who are in terrible situations. But we don't have anything in common because we don't possess the kind of hate that they possessed. And they support that kind of nonsense that they support, and the racist nonsense that they support against their own interests because of their own hate. So we don't share anything in common with those people. And if they did share things in common, we would see that there would be a common approach with those people. But that group of people has never and never will be common with black folks' interest. That's why you don't see the guy in the pickup truck running down, walking down the streets with us. You see them out there with the people with the tiki torches, because that's what they represent. That's what they believe, despite their economic and social conditions. That's what they believe. That's what they stand firm on, and they will stand to that to their death. So we don't have anything in common with them. The fact is that when Barack Obama got elected, and you said it right, it was a moment that we saw of the potential greatness of what this country, what we aspire and hope that this country comes to be. All of us hope that this country reaches that greatness. We saw a glimmer of it, but that was the ceremony. But when it got down to the actual practice of it, on the day of the inauguration, 12 or 13 white men got together, Jim DeMinch, Newt Gingrich, and a bunch of them got together, went over to the Caucus Room restaurant across the street from the inauguration and made a pledge that we will vote against every policy that this black president brings forth, even if it helps our people, to make sure to ensure that he is a one-term president. Please don't give me this business about, yes, there are millions of white folks that don't possess that same kind of hatred, but there are white folks in positions of power that do, and we cannot ignore it. Yes, black folks get up every day to fight, and to fight hard. And there are people out here who are fighting every single day for this country, for our communities, and for our families to be in better conditions every day. And yes, we have to continue to do it. And black folks has always done that, always have done that. That's what have made black folks as great as they are. Black folks have never relented, and we continue to fight and struggle on. But you cannot ignore that there is this resistance of people who just hate you because of your pigmentation, because they believe that you are inferior, period, no matter how talented you are. John Johnson had the same experience when he bought his condominium downtown, bought a condo downtown.
1970.
White woman was walking down the hallway, saw John Johnson standing in the hallway, and asked him who was moving in there. And he told her, "I'm moving in there." And she said, "I'm moving out."
So that was 1970 what?
Somewhere around there, 71,
Yeah.
72 or something like that.
Almost 50 years ago, my brother.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
There's
it's
a lot
it's
of
still
stuff going
prevalent
on 50
today.
years ago, man. Still
Yeah.
prevalent?
Yes, it is.
Like you
Yes,
can't,
it is.
You can't rent an apartment downtown?
I never tried to rent an apartment downtown.
But I'll tell you that.
Well, wait a second. Hold on a second. Hold on. I did try to rent it. You asked me the question. Let me tell you the story.
no.
I'm
You said
going
you
to tell you the
hadn't
story. No, I never tried to rent an apartment downtown, but I did
Okay.
try to rent an apartment when I moved to Chicago 38 years ago on the north side. Those two big, tall black towers down there, and I got approved online, or not online, but you send the fax over, and I got approved. But when I went to go see the unit, it was a condominium. When I went to go see the unit, and the white folks realized that it was a black man who they were talking to on the phone, that they couldn't distinguish whether it was a black man or not. When I walked there, they called me back and said, "Well, our parents decided that they're going to hold the unit for my sister." When I started my mortgage business and I went down to Bridgeport there to see a client, went to the house, when they realized I was black, they wouldn't even open the door to let me in their home. So, I don't know about you, but yes, there are 6 women, I wish I had their names, that have been dismissed from their high-ranking positions in universities because they're black, because they're DEI, which what's his name, Vivek Ramaswamy, and the rest of those people have said that to do it done away. I'm just telling you,
I know, man.
don't
You changed subject
be
on me.
disillusioned that this situation is any better. Come on.
I want you to wrap up tonight. I want you to tell me how this is going to end in terms of where we're going as a people. I mean, because I think I've heard you say that this racism, this white racism, cannot be fixed. So what are we going to do? How are we going to survive here?
What we're going to continue to do is what black folk has always done, is find a way to fight through it. And we're going to continue to do that. That's what we always do. We don't sit and do what you have suggested that we sit about as complaining like we can't do anything. But you have to realize what you're up against so that you can arm yourself to work against it. We're going to continue to fight. Black folks are going to continue to fight for as long as black folks exist. We are going to continue to fight, and some of us are going to overcome those hurdles, fighting for our children, our grandchildren, and people that come behind us to have, better access than we do now. We're going to continue to fight. We're going to continue to struggle that, and we have to organize ourselves together to push back against those systems, because guess what? There are black people who are in those systems that are going along with those systems that are causing the kinds of disparities that we see right here in Chicago, in Cook County, in the state of Illinois. We have 193 black people.
Are you saying that the disparities will always be there?
The disparities will always be. We have to continue to
Okay, if
fight
that's what you
against them.
believe. For me, I don't have any problems up here. I'm just going on like, I'm just keeping on, man. And I'm not worried about, Florida or racist white people, or I'm going to try to be like my brother from the Congo, who thinks that he is in the greatest, he's in heaven on earth by being in this country. He went waist deep in the Rio Grande River, sold everything he had, waist deep in the Rio Grande River, just so he can come to America and hopefully drive a cab, because he knows he's in heaven when it comes to this earth. He knows that. And so he's going to work. He's going to be, hey, I'm one of those with an advantage on this planet. I'm a black man, but I have an advantage on a planetary basis. Now, here in the country, I got work to do, but planetarily, I am at the top because I'm in the United States of America, where there is more opportunity for a black man than any other country on this planet. Hey, man, it's 9 o'clock. We got to go.
All right, we got to go, folks. Listen, we thank you for tuning in for this edition of The People Show with Mark Wallace and Charles Thomas on Intellectual Radio on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And now we are streaming at Instagram. Listen, we're going to be bringing you some special shows. Thank you all for tuning in. Share, like, and share the video with others, and bring people into the conversation. Listen, in a couple of weeks, maybe a month or so, we're going to have a situation. Hopefully we have it in place where we'll be able to actually take calls. We'll be talking more about that in the future. But thank you all so much for tuning into the program. We'll talk to you
Good night.
same time next week. Good night.